Let's talk about the latest update in this Derek Carr saga. He did speak on the record, finally. It wasn't in a church service or through his brother or cryptically on social media. He spoke with Front Office Sports about his departure from the Saints. The retirement papers were filed on Tuesday, and things can move forward. But I do think that there's a development in this story because of the quote. And the biggest deal was that Carr got his $10 million roster bonus, but he forfeited the $30 million in guaranteed money that had been restructured, and that goes back to the Saints. And everybody's looking at that going, $30 million? Who walks away from $30 million? And Carr's got a quote on it. It says, "That part was tough because I didn't want to have surgery and just sit there. It sounds crazy, but just take the Saints' money. I never played just for the money. I had a whole bunch of people tell me how crazy it was, and man, I would have never done that. And that's all cool, but I've gained all these things and the world has to offer, and it doesn't really do anything for your heart. I knew my heart was at peace, and that's really all that mattered." Okay, so let me take all of this information and give you the possibility if Derek Carr is actually telling the truth, which he may be, he may not be, but this is a possibility. You can doubt it and hate it and yell and scream about it all you want. It is a possibility that Derek Carr signed a contract, played the first couple of years, got hurt, needed to have surgery, said, okay, I have the surgery, I'm not going to play, and the Saints will have to pay me $30 million. It's not really fair to the Saints if I'm not playing, and if I don't have the surgery, I can play, but I won't be very good, and that's kind of taking their money too and putting me at risk, and I can just take the $10 million right off into the sunset, and look, I've made 196 in my career. I don't need the $30 million. I can just move on, and that's what I'm going to do. Like that is a real possibility. You can decide if it's 90% likely that happened or 4% likely that happened. It is a real possibility. What I struggle with is when Kat Terrell asked Derek Carr after last season if he would take a pay cut, which would ultimately help the Saints as far as their salary cap goes, decrease the amount of money he was earning, spread it out amongst the roster to try to get better. Derek Carr was adamant and immediately direct in saying, no, I would not take a pay cut. Feel like I've played well. That's the contract. So no. And so for him to say I've never played for the money in this quote, and then when asked about playing for less money, say I'm not going to do that, well, now all of a sudden we've got a little bit of a contradiction. Now, y'all know my personality. I think that one of these personality tests that we do at Guarantee that lays out kind of the way your mind works, and we talk about it once a quarter around here. I'm this Enneagram number 9, and it forces me to often look at both sides of an issue. And I think that's probably a hindrance to the great talk show guy that just, man, takes a point and he's saying, I'm right, you're wrong, here it comes, and that's not my nature. But I also think that at times it allows me to analyze both sides of the situation instead of planting my flag in the ground and saying, I'm right, you're wrong. So on this instance, let me look at that contradiction that says, I never played for the money, but on the other hand, I'm not taking a pay cut. And let me just try to go, okay, well, he's not taking a pay cut if he's the starting quarterback of the Saints and he's out there for 17 games and he's waking up early and doing film study and going to practice and leading the team and running film sessions and doing extra drills and the OTAs and the mini camps. And if he's doing that, he's getting what he signed for. And if he's not, which is the instance now, well, I don't deserve that. It's possible. It just seems far-fetched. Is that fair to say? I have thought a lot of the way Derek Carr has handled himself as the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints until about December. And something changed with his messaging, with the communication outwardly in the media and with the team, with the cryptic stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and now David Carr's talking, and now there's a church deal, and now we got Carr reviews on the internet, and now we're retiring all of a sudden, and now there's money involved, and we'll take the and like I don't know enough to bang this desk and go, Derek Carr is a liar. He thinks the Saints are going to sue him. That's why he's given the $30 million. But, like, I don't know that. That sounds fun to Joe Saints fan who detests Derek Carr and wants to jump in and say anything they possibly can negatively about Derek Carr. It sounds fun. To me, personally, with the information that Hunt Palmer has to this day, it would be irresponsible for me to get here and do that. Irresponsible, because I don't know it to be true. Again, I'm not backing Derek Carr and going, clearly the guy's salt of the earth. Signed a contract. If he's played, he's going to take the contract. If he's not going to take the contract. Like, I don't know. What appears evident to me with context clues and connecting dots and looking at this whole situation, which was obviously just a complete failure, is that something has eroded and deteriorated between the organization and Derek Carr since the fall. Call it September, call it December, whatever. And that's why Derek Carr is saying these things. And that's why Mickey Loomis, when asked about Derek Carr, when he hadn't said anything about Derek Carr, saying we've said enough about Derek Carr, even though he hadn't said anything about Derek Carr, that is a red flag. Something is up. And I could try to connect dots, and I could come out here and yell and scream, and I could talk about how terrible Derek Carr is, and I promise you, the Saints fans that listen terrestrial and radio and that pull up our videos on YouTube and that see our shorts on Instagram, they would all yell and scream and applaud and clap, and they would all love that. I can't get to that level because I just don't know. What I can suggest is it is as odd a fractured relationship and ultimate divorce as I can recall, and I don't know that we're ever going to get the answers. If Derek Carr had never played in the NFL and forfeited $30 million, you would know something was up because nobody goes from nothing to $30 million. It becomes more plausible when you've made $200 to forfeit $30. It still doesn't make a lot of sense because I don't know of anybody that's perfectly willing to forfeit that cash, especially after they have come out and said, hey, would you take a pay cut? Absolutely would not take a pay cut. I just don't know if that one's jiving with me at all. 10 million's good. 30 in addition to that seems better.
Yeah, it's just, I was listening to Off the Bench this morning and Ross Jackson was on and he said, I've interviewed Derek Carr a lot. I've seen him in the locker room plenty of times, talked to him. He's been a very nice guy when I've talked to him. I don't know if he's giving up $30 million nice. That may be a bit excessive to assume that.
And for almost the entirety of the population, that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Not everybody's made $200 million.
Yeah, that's true.
And it just, that puts people in a little bit of a different spot. I mean, there are plenty of guys, like there are plenty of athletes who have like $6 million deals on the table at the twilight of their career, and they're like, no, not doing that. I'm not going to play for them for that. I'm not going to do that. Like David Robertson is a closer who is just out there, and he could pitch right now. He pitched good last year, and he's a closer that's free agent, and he wants like $10 million. The Cubs have talked about, I've heard people say, and they're more willing to go like $3 million, and he's like, I'm not playing for $3 million. And so you're forfeiting. It's like there are some people that are in that position, and I could make the case that Derek Carr is in that position. It's just hard.
It's hard.
And if that was the only thing, then I could explain it away. The Loomis answer about, we've already talked about that when they hadn't said anything.
The pay cut thing
and the pay cut thing from last year, and the fraction, and the Diane Rossini, she didn't just make that up on a podcast. Like, you don't get to that point in sports media just throwing stuff off the wall. There are plenty of people in the quote-unquote media that are willing to throw stuff all over the place to get people to click their stuff on YouTube. Diana Rossini's not in that camp.
No,
so
she's not.
it just, the whole thing stinks. And the root of the entire thing and what it's going to ultimately come back to is the Saints are moving on and we don't have to worry about it. But it is a team we cover, and they're not practicing in earnest right now. And it is a story that continues to develop. And when Derek Carr finally speaks for the first time, I think it's relevant to talk about what he had to say. So that's what we've done here. I'm torn. I'm not on Derek Carr's side. I'm not on Joe from the West Bank side who thinks that everything Derek Carr does is the worst thing that's ever been done. I'm somewhere in the middle of that, and I don't know that I'm ever going to be moved off of that because I don't know if we're going to get the actual information that truly suggests what ultimately happened. Hey, it's Hunt. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.